Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Stone Genius Podcast. My name's Ro, you know me. I'm the Stone Genius. I'm often stoned. I'm always a genius. We have a very special guest joining us today. He is an author. He is joining us to talk about a book that he wrote. And the name of that book is A Cup of Tea on the Commode. Welcome to the program, Steven Porro. How are you doing?
Thank you, and welcome. We're broadcasting from the south of France. So
I mean, and that is amazing that this technology is available. I get to say that I'm lucky as an adult now that I get to pick the people that I talk to, because we don't always get to do that in life. And then I'm not now geographically located to the people I can see or go meet. It's awesome that we can be 7 time zones away from each other and then still find a time to get together and talk. So I'm so excited that you're on the program, and I have a lot of questions for you. So we'll get started with this one. Originally a New Jersey native, and when you sent some information to me, you put exit 163. So I was going to ask, why did you include, is that some... I didn't understand the reference. Like if I'm telling someone that I live in Kansas City, I have never once thought about exit. Unless it was exit 69, I'm not giving that number out.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a Jersey joke. People, when you say you're from Jersey, most people, the next question is what exit?
Okay.
So they want to know where in Jersey. So anybody from Jersey will know that that's way up north. So we were about 20 minutes outside of New York City in the farthest northeast county. So it's a silly joke, but most people, at least from Jersey, get that.
Well, and I figured it was, and that's why I wanted to ask, because I guess it would be the same of naming, kind of the suburb that you're from. I mean, here in Kansas City, it's like suburb. If you mention, everyone knows whether it's affluent or not, and I guess that's kind of just what you all are doing with exits there. I also wanted to mention that you earned an industrial design degree from The Ohio State University. So you left New Jersey, you started moving west, and we're going to jump along. And if you want to stop me at any point to fill in the blanks, you can. I want to get to what we came to talk about. You're an author. You wrote the book, A Cup of Tea on the Commode, which is your sad, sweet, funny debut memoir, chronicles the multitasking adventures of filling his mother's last years with love, laughter, and joy. I'm 56. I have a mother who's 85. That's one reason when I saw you, I was like, we need to talk. So let me back up a little. So you left New Jersey, you went to Ohio State. What led you to Ohio State to get an industrial design degree? And I guess I need to back up even one more step. What's an industrial design degree?
Well, I originally went there for medicine. I wanted to be an eye surgeon, ophthalmologist, since I was in 8th grade. And it wasn't until I think writing this book where I realized, why did I want to be an eye surgeon that early in life? And at the time, my best friend, they didn't have a car. They had a limo. They had heated sidewalks and driveway. They had an elevator in their house. They had an elaborate stock car or stock car or slot cars thing up in the attic. And he just had every toy in the world. And I said, what does your dad do? He says, he's an ophthalmologist. And I said, okay, I want those same things. I think that's the way to do it.
So you didn't realize that until you started writing the book, what you're...
I think I knew it inside, but, I was sitting there going, when you're 13, 14 years old, what makes you, make that decision? And I kept that vision going until I went to Ohio State, and because they had a good medical school, and my sister studied there. She was a dance education major. So I visited that school. I also visited Harvard, and I went to Ohio State because apparently they're not as strict about the SAT scores and things like that. So, but they had a good medical school. But once I got there, I think I did pretty good in my placement exams, and I got stuck in this advanced courses in physics and calculus and things like that. And I said, oh, holy crap, I'm going to be doing this stuff for 12 years. This is not what I want to do, because I had a very strong creative side. So I looked through the curriculum book and I came up with industrial design, and it married all my loves. I loved math and science, but I also loved art. And this was a lovely fusion of all three of those. And I was very fortunate at the time. So I've got some pretty good angels that have been over my shoulder in my life. It happened to be one of the top 3 design schools in the country.
And you just happened to be there when you decided that was the new route that you were going to take. You just already happened to be at that school. That's nice how sometimes the universe or God, whomever, works like that somehow.
Yeah, it was very lucky. And so then I got but again, we had a strong creative side. My mother was really big into the arts and got us all into the ballet early on. So we were all performing as kids. I retired at around 10 or 11.
From your ballet career?
Pardon me?
From your ballet career, you retired from that about 10?
I wanted to end on a high note.
Well, congratulations. And one of the notes that I had written down just early on, because of your history, and I actually wrote it sideways because it was one of my, and I don't know why I wrote it like this. Actually, I do. I was high. So I wrote, creativity always an issue? Because sometimes it can be a little bit of a burden, because there are times when I'm working on this show that if I'm thinking about you and the question, I don't get to really choose when I think about those. I don't think about when I get to formulate those, when I need to write those down. So sometimes I feel like creativity can be somewhat of an issue. So it sounds like you, coming from a creative family, you did this. Was it always something you enjoyed, or was your family allowing you to, you retired from ballet at 10, so were you kind of narrowing your focus at that point?
I don't think it was a conscious decision. I had a lot of trouble with Irene Fokin was our Russian dance instructor, and she was a tough cookie, and I had a very strong will. And so we butted heads quite a bit. So I got fired from the Christmas time, the Nutcracker performance, which was a big deal because they got a lot of talent for the major parts from New York City. And to be in that show was really kind of an honor. But for me, I got stuck playing some roles I didn't care for.
I'm a little shocked that you didn't lead with your email to me that you got fired from the Nutcracker at such a young age. I think you kind of have buried the lead now at this point.
Well, I don't want to. There's a chapter in the book, and I didn't want to, spoil everything. So
right,
I have to leave some fun things to discover along the way. But once I quit the ballet, I focused more on baseball. My dad was a baseball coach, and my older brothers played, and they were very good. And then I discovered girls shortly after, and quit baseball for the girls, and it's been hell ever since. No, it's lovely. So I have, but that creative side came back in while I was designing, and I started doing some modeling and commercials in Columbus, Ohio. And I was in this Man of the 80s contest, which is, again, this is going to be spoiling some of the book, but I came in second out of all these guys. It was Man of the 80s. And I made a joke in the book saying, if you had a suit, you got into the finals. So I had a suit from business, got into the finals. And then from there, I started modeling and doing commercials and stuff. And they said they were casting me in commercials because I could act. And I went, well, that's interesting. And so I had a connection out in Hollywood. So I flew out there for a couple of weeks, and I landed a really good design job because I had a really good design portfolio and worked for a couple of really good firms in Columbus. And so I had a design job offered to me, and I also met with an agent and signed with her, and then moved out a couple months later and started studying from day one, and studied. I was there for 28 years, so I pretty much studied most of that time because, it's like anything else. It's a muscle, and you got to keep it tuned up. And my goal was to get on Hill Street Blues and shows like that. I wanted to be a good actor and known as a quality actor. And 2 years after, just less than 2 years after I got there, I got on Hill Street Blues.
Well,
so that was my start.
And that's amazing at that age, because I never had that focus. I mean, I was always like, I like to do something. I would focus on what I was doing, but I was never like, I want to be on Hill Street Blues, and then had that. I mean, yeah. So that would be nice. So you've made your way all the way from New Jersey to Tinseltown. So you're now in Hollywood, and you spend quite a bit of time in Hollywood as well. And let me read the description that you sent me. You enjoy the carefree bachelor's life in Los Angeles. No steady girlfriend, no children, and few responsibilities outside of work. But it all changed when the call came. And the call, I actually have underlined it. I have put parentheses around it. It is in bold and highlighted. So I'm a little bit familiar with that call. So at any time during your career, well, let me ask this about the career. What was your favorite part of acting? Did you enjoy like the Hill Street Blues, the production, like on video? Did you do live stage? Did you prefer one over the other? Or was it just whatever was gratifying in the moment?
I think most of my training was theater training once I went out to Hollywood. And I have to say, working with the live audience is, you feed off the audience. If you have a good audience, if you have a bad audience, you really feel it, and you have to work even harder to try to win them over. But if you have a good audience and you're like in sync, right, it is just heaven. And I also did stand up for a little bit, and it's the same thing. If you have a tough crowd, you gotta work extra hard to win them over. But if people are there saying, "Listen, I'm coming for a good time," that's great, and that's the same in the theater. But if it's like, this guy better be funny, or this show better be good, and you feel it, because I did a production. It was like a special performance. My acting coach was a really well-known director, Milton Casellas, on Broadway, and his actors have won Tonys, Oscars, and Emmys and stuff like that. So he was a very influential guy in Hollywood. Probably half of Hollywood has gone through the Beverly Hills Playhouse. So he cast me in a special mini production. It was a stage adaptation of Fellini's 8 1/2. And it was great and very inventive and very, very interesting, about a 25-minute production. And we had 2 audiences come in the same night. And the first audience were people who didn't know the cast, because our cast was from a different class of Miltons. And you could feel the tension and like, show me, I'm not so happy I didn't get cast in this thing, but you got to prove to me. And it was really interesting. You really feel that energy. And it went fine, but the next show were people who liked us and were more supportive, and you could just feel it. And the show went so much better, because the energy that the audience kind of said, we're gonna have a great night, and you're gonna be great.
Have you tried, I'm sure you have at some point, but improv, and how do you like, so I've tried stand-up myself. A lot of people will be like, oh, you're funny, you should try stand-up. And I'm like, I know, I'm fucking hilarious, but I'm funny in like something will happen. And I'm quick-witted, and I can make a comment, and I'm very good at knowing my audience. Like if I can get away with me saying something about wearing my wife's fishnet stockings just because I know someone's fucking an earshot and they'll get a little giggle out of it, I will do that. Yeah. I have tried to write jokes. In fact, the day that we are recording this, I have alerted some people that my intention is to do an open mic night tonight, which is only 3 minutes, which I always say I can get through 3 minutes, but I think my wife may debate that sometimes. So, but to me, comedy is really hard, because you're either telling like one-liners, which then you have to come up with so many to fill a set, or you have to do something to tie a whole something in the beginning and the end. That's why I remember one of Dave Chappelle's specials. He tells a punchline at the beginning, does an hour set, and closes with the joke to that punchline he told at the beginning. And that to me is amazing. I never in 100 years could do that. Put me in a room or something with strangers.
Not many people can do what Chappelle does.
So, well, yeah, but it's still amazing to see, professionals like yourself that are able to to thread that story together and get up there. Because like you say, it's deafening. So I've done open mic night twice before. The very first time I got a huge laugh. The very first thing I said, deafening silence the next 2 minutes and 55 seconds. And I mean, I never thought you could feel silence like that, but Jiminy Crackhorn, every ounce of exposed skin, or yeah, it was horrible. So you're in your career. How was your relationship with your family up to this time? Because now you've migrated all the way across, and it doesn't sound like at this point you had any, well, I'm going to go home for a few years and sort things out. It looks like you went to Ohio, then you went to California. So how was your relationship during this time with your family?
Yeah, well, the family, I was very close with my folks and my siblings. I've got 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters, and 1 younger sister. Going out to California, I think I had a sister who moved out shortly after, but she was a teacher. So she was teaching in California, not living in LA. I think she was in Orange County at the time. I first lived in Hermosa Beach, which was wild, living at the beach. I lived there for 9 months. So I didn't invite my parents to come visit because it was too crazy. That was crazy time.
So what is your definition of crazy time? Just what was going on outside? Like, was it drug uses, prostitution? Just what kind of shenanigans, as I would say here in the Midwest, what kind of shenanigans was going on that you did not want to invite?
Everything but prostitution.
Okay.
I lived with a cocaine dealer.
Okay.
I never did coke, and I saw what it did to a lot of very respectable people in a short period of time. And then the dealer, who was a roommate, a good guy, but and then he started doing more than he was selling.
Yeah.
And so I said, I got to get out of this house because they're going to get busted eventually, and I'm not part of this. So
yeah. I can't. I've never tried cocaine myself. I don't like the way it smells. So see, you couldn't hear. I had a perfect rim shot on that. And when you listen to the audio portion of this, you will go, that was a perfect rim shot on that. So
good. I didn't know I had to do double duty here, for God's sakes. Come on, the pressure. It's the pressure.
So you have a good relationship with your parents. So it sounds like when the call came that your dad was not around at that point. Because so right. he
but I got that call 14 years earlier from my same brother about my dad. So that was So I was unfortunately my brother had to deliver those calls, and then I had to deliver very difficult calls when both of my parents passed to everybody, because I was with both of them when they took their last breath. So
did you return home for an extended period of time with your dad near the end with your dad as well? See, so, and I'll just tell mine real quick. So when my dad passed 2 years ago, it was my mom was with him. She was with him all the time and everything. And we would visit, we saw him quite a bit, but it was really for his day-to-day needs. We would do the things that she couldn't, but she was there. Now that he's not around, she doesn't have anyone. So as we're entering this stage with her, we are now fully responsible for that. And so with your dad, how much I mean, and it's not like response. I don't mean it like that, but geographically, I understand, and people understand families. If someone's on the other coast and you have family that's down the street, why wouldn't your family down the? So I understand. So I don't mean it like that, but like with your dad, when that happened, how much were you involved with that as opposed to what happened when you got the call from your mom?
Well, like you said, my mom was there. I have 2 brothers that lived close in New Jersey, and they were both even with my mom, still living in the house we all grew up in. So when my brother called about my dad, he said the doctor says he has 30 days. And we knew that was coming because he had heart disease. And that's a really slow, horrible, horrible death. So he said, we have 30 days. So I flew in the next morning, and I kind of took over because I think my brother was exhausted. I knew my mother was exhausted. And but we only had 8 days with my dad. But it was almost 24/7. He was great because he didn't want anybody to really do anything. He only allowed us to do only the most difficult things for him to do,
Right.
Because he wanted to maintain his dignity. So one of his things was nobody's going to wipe my butt. And with my mom, it was nobody else is going to wipe my butt. It's Mark. So
Lucky
that was,
you.
well,
Congratulations on that designation.
well, you do what you got to do. But with my dad, a sense of humor is so important in our family. Both of my parents were kind of nutty, and luckily they passed that on. But so 2 days before my dad's pass, he had, so with the heart disease, you maintain a lot of extra water weight. So this guy was normally about 165. Now he's about 200 pounds, and it's water weight. So he can't get up on his own. So I help him over to the commode. We have a commode near his bed. And my mother was used to doing this. So she stood at his side with the tissue paper, and I get my dad on the commode, and I stand him up, and he turns to my mom and says, "Give me 2 sheets. 2 small pieces of toilet paper." And my mom says, "2 sheets." And he says, "I'm very accurate." And I almost dropped him. We all just burst out laughing. And this poor guy still had to come up with the jokes at the end. And so nobody ever wiped his butt except for my dad. So maintaining your dignity is really important, and certainly a good quality to have, but also that sense of humor, and that played a huge role in my adventures with my mom.
I think I didn't think of this really. I mean, it's not that I didn't think of that could happen someday, but sometimes our 2 grown daughters, and generally it's one more than the other, they always want to know who's the favorite. And I should warn them, whoever the favorite is going to get to wipe my butt at the end. So maybe they should dial back their enthusiasm about how much they want to be the favorite child at this point.
And are they willing to put it in writing?
Yeah, no,
you may have to do that.
Yeah. So you only get 8 days with your dad. And with my dad, he had a major stroke, which we thought would take him. He actually did very well for a few years after, and then he declined quite a bit the last few years. But, we were one of those, well, this is his last Christmas. This is the last Christmas, and then we started, this is the 7th anniversary of his last Christmas that he hasn't had yet. It just got, and so but my mom was there. And that's why we live close, and my sister lived out of town. So we would go quite a bit. I mean, my mom needs help. She can't do a lot of things. When my dad had a stroke, they are from the generation where she went to get gas in her car the first time, had no idea how to do it at all because she had never done it. So when she needed gas, they would just switch cars, and he would take her car and get gas in, and they'd trade back the next day. So she never had to do anything. So it was a huge change for her. But we had a lot of time with him near the end. When your dad passes, did you continue? Did you stay around, back with your family for an extended period of time, or did you return to California fairly quickly after that?
I stayed for a few weeks just to kind of be with my mom, because that was going to be, at that point, it was an empty household except for mom. The same house we grew up in, so 5-bedroom house. And so without dad's presence, it was a big deal and a big transition. Even though a couple of the other kids lived close by, I wanted to stay with her. And so I stayed a few weeks till I felt that she was okay being, on her own, and then went back to LA. But she would come out and visit, which was great. Well, both of them did. Once I got out of the cocaine palace, I invited them, and so they came out together a few times and separately, and it was great. So one of the things that really helped, I think, with my mom. So 14 years later, we get the call about my mom. She just turned 89, and my same brother calls and says that mom just shut down. So and she's not responsive, and so I put her to bed and called the doctor. The doctor said she's going, cut off all meds, no food, no drink, and call hospice. And so we all flew in again the next day, because we were on death watch. We didn't know what was going on. No physical pain. She just, it seemed like to me that she was depressed. At that point, she was, again, living in our childhood home. But we had a family that moved in upstairs that was looking out, supposed to keep her company and take care of the household chores and things like that, do the shopping. Mom could walk and function and get to the bathroom and stuff on her own, but shopping and making sure the house was clean and all that kind of stuff. We hired a family and gave them a super deal to be in our house and keep her company. But she didn't like them, and they didn't like her, and they were there for years.
Really?
And,
with that animosity?
Well, my mother didn't bury it so well, but the other family did, because they had a pretty super deal. And so their contempt came out while I was there. But I sensed the tension. I think she just said, look, if this is my life, this sucks, and I'm out of here. So we had a priest come in and deliver the last rites. And we didn't know how long she was going to be with us. So my younger sister and I hung out with hospice all the time, because we wanted to learn how to take care of our mother for as long as she was going to be with us. So we learned how to change the bedding with a helpless patient in bed, change the diapers, attend to any medical needs and things like that. So we were really good students. And I think my mom, she didn't talk and she opened her eyes very rarely, but she did respond to touch. And I sensed that she knew we were there. And so I wrote a chapter in the book called A Silent Scream, which I think it was a cry for help. There was no love in the house, and she deserved a lot better. So once I was there and started looking around the environment and noticing the tension in the house, I said, this doesn't work. So I stayed with her for several weeks. And then hospice is interesting. Hospice really means well, but we had just a train of hospice nurses coming in, because they're hired for 6 months, but usually it doesn't take that long. And the results usually are not very good. But if the patient survives, they're under contract, at least in New Jersey, for 6 months. So we knew they were going to be there for a while. And so we learned what we could. But when the hospices nurses, the new ones came in, we had to show them the directive from the supervisor saying no food, no meds, no getting out of bed. And they said, okay, great. And so we kept an eye on her. And then this one nurse reads it and says, okay, fine. She walks right into my mother's room and says, Mrs. Porro, would you like some food? And my sister and I almost jumped over the bed and jumped on her. I said, what are you doing? But my mom's eyes shot open for the first time in weeks, like a dinner bell rang.
Right.
And so this nurse accuses us of trying to starve our mother to death, which may happen. We weren't doing it, but it may happen in certain cases. You know, they let them go. We want the inheritance or whatever it is. So we told her to go call her supervisor because she broke the rules. And supervisor said, you broke the rules, get out. We're going to send another nurse in the meantime, I'm thinking, wait a minute, maybe mom is hungry. And hospice's initial assessment was wrong. So I go in and I asked my mom, are you hungry? And she said, for the first time, again, weeks, first time she's speaking, what do you got? And I said, well, anything you want. And she says, how about some pumpkin pie? And at this point, it's March. This whole thing started like the first week of February. Now we're into March. And it's not pumpkin pie season.
Right.
But my brother, who lived locally, I asked him if he can go look for some pumpkin pies. And so he went out, and by some small miracle, about a half hour later, he came back with 2 fresh pumpkin pies. And so she had a piece of pumpkin pie. She spit out the first bite because, again, that was the first food in weeks. I said, well, that didn't go very well, but let's try again. And next spoonful did great. She downed half the pie, and she was wide awake. And she recognized everybody, and it was like mom was back. And the next day she downed the other half of the pie, and the next day she downed the full pie. And she might have been riding the most continuous sugar high, but she was back, and it was great. And so I think at that point, I didn't move back right away, but I had the idea that mom deserves better. So we've got to change this situation.
I'm writing the note down right now because I wanted to make sure I ask this. During this whole pumpkin pie thing, did you offer your mom anything other than pumpkin pie? Did you say, hey, do you want to try a salad, maybe a burger, maybe a fish stick? Was there anything besides pumpkin pie, or was it just she wants pumpkin pie, let's give her pumpkin pie?
She asked for pumpkin pie, and when I said anything you want, she gets anything you want. So, and at that point, 89 years old, I think a avocado salad isn't so necessary. So you get the pumpkin pie if you want the pumpkin pie.
So let me
later on, we went to healthier things. When I took over all the cooking, we did some healthier meals, of course.
Well, and that kind of, and I probably am jumping the gun here because you're just now getting ready or returning home from California to stay with your mom, but like at that point leading up to then, I guess, like because you were mentioning how at that age that you're like, an avocado salad is probably not necessary. Because I used to have that debate with my mom. Like at the end, my dad was fairly sedentary. He couldn't do a lot. And my mom really wanted him to continue. Well, you need to stand up. You need to try to walk. You need to try. And he hated doing that. Mm-hmm. And there was always that push. Because I always tell my mom, he died at 90. And I'd be like, he's 88, he's 89, or early into his 90, when he turned 90. I'd be like, what is the big deal that it's not like he's going to run. I don't think him standing up and shuffling 3 feet and then shuffling back 3 feet and sitting down is going to exponentially extend his life. And it just seems like it's more of a, it seemed more of a conflict. And that was one thing that and this is just a personal note with my parents near the end, is I saw more conflict between them the last few years and they were married 59 years. He passed right before it would have been their 60th. So, but I saw more conflict because, because he would yell, just leave me alone. I don't need to do that. And so that was very difficult as well. So at this point that you're coming back, were you anticipating conflict with your mom? That if I know that some of that's detailed in the book, and that you've detailed to me the answer to this, but so everyone else, how do those conversations go about when you get here? I'm taking care of you, Mom, and and discussing the boundaries of where that goes.
Okay, so it's important to ask permission, I guess, on every step and almost everything that I did. But before I decided to move back, so I was there for a number of weeks, learned things, then went back to LA knowing that hospice was going to be on duty. So I felt a little, I guess, more comfortable leaving her. I came back in September, took care of her for a couple more weeks. And at that point, I asked her, if she wanted me to move back permanently to take care of her. And she said yes. And I said, well, if I do that, do you understand I'll do everything in my power to keep you healthy and safe? And she said yes. And I said, okay, that means I'm in charge. And that means you must obey me. And her mood completely shifted. And she looked me dead in the eye and then puckered up for a kiss, because I call her the kissing bandit. And I wasn't sure if that was a sign of surrender or one wishing me luck. So I gave her a kiss and hoped for the best. And she could be a tough cookie, but it was important to, she trusted me. And luckily, my siblings also trusted me, because I was good at multitasking. And when I took on a new project, I gave it 100%. And my design and my acting and all that stuff came into play during this thing. So, but it was important to make sure I had her permission. So there was no conflict with anybody actually in our family about this. The only conflict would have been with these people that were living upstairs, because they were still there for a while. And with my parents, as opposed to yours, they were married. I call it the typical Catholic marriage. There was a lot of conflict growing up. You had two very independent people, both had their full-time careers. And they butted heads a lot. Both were very strong-willed and stubborn. And the last number of years, my mother was there for him. And it was like they were a young couple in love, because my dad didn't want to go to the hospital. And the only reason he didn't have to go to the hospital is because mom said, I'm going to help. So they did everything outpatient wise, going to the heart center and stuff like that. And so it was because of her that he got to stay home, which was his wish. And he knew that. So I would see these two when my mom walked into his room, and he would just grin when she entered the room, and he would reach out for her hand. And it was like all the stuff I never saw as a child. And it was just gorgeous.
Yeah. See, and that's what's amazing. And that's what hurt me at the end, is because I always saw those things you saw at the end. Mine was reverse. I saw that my parent, like my wife and I have been together 28 years, and we don't leave the house without giving each other a kiss. We just don't. I mean, we'll be half the way to the car and we'll walk back in, and sometimes we'll walk back in like, bye, see you later. Like it was a chore to do it, but we also know that it was more important to do it than it was being a hassle. So I love that you got to see that at the end, especially if that's something that you weren't around. Because I remember my dad would say some mean shit. I mean, he's like, I don't know why I ever married you. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, you're the one that told me you knew the night you met her that you were going to get married to her. You married her 10 months later, and you're married for 59 years, and now you're saying this shit just because she wants you to get up. And that's when I would be like, you know, I get that he's saying this. He doesn't mean it, but he doesn't need to. I mean, come on. Let's pick our battles here. You know, let's get him to take the pills he needs to, or the medicines he needs to, and eat the food he needs to, and have the bowel movements, because that's always big later on in life. I found out very well that the nature and the timing of bowel movements. I mean, there was a time where my dad would have a spreadsheet to let us know what was going on, and thank you, Dad. We appreciate that very much. Okay.
Yeah, I would call it, I would get color commentary from my mom.
So, but that leads to, now that we're talking about shit, that leads to the Commode conversation. So you're back, you're taking care of your mother. You have told her that you are now in charge. So did her mood changes, and I get that. So and I'm going to interject again with what's going on with me, is my mom has stopped telling me some stuff because... So she fell, and she was having trouble with her knee. And I was like, well, why is it not getting better? And she goes, it just hurts when I go to exercise class. 85 years old. Well, if you just fell, why are you going to exercise class? Well, I really need to. No, you need your knee to heal. So then she fell again. Different knee, because she's still going to exercise class. So then, but she's not telling me this. I'm having to find out either from my wife who gets told, or our kids who get told, or randomly from someone that works at the place where she lives. When I walk in, they're like, hey, how's your mom's knee? I'm like, well, I have no idea. Thanks. So I get to go at. So my mom has kind of stopped telling me things at this point to keep me in the dark, because she doesn't want me to treat her like she treated me when I was little. Like, you do what the doctor says, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's how it was. And that's why I get frustrated with her now. So you have made that declaration with your mom that you are now in charge. Her demeanor changed, sounds almost immediately, just in her expression. But how did it go? She probably didn't like that. You may not have really enjoyed the everything that's going to entail this responsibility, but how did that go for you all?
It to me, it went great. And I think for my mom, it was that was kind of a little joke of hers. Again, she could be a tough cookie. She was stubborn as all get out. We had a couple of moments, I would say. And so I call it my adventure. It was 3.5 years. And we only had maybe a couple of moments where it got a little heated. And it wasn't on her part. It was, she would just shut down, and whether it was being depressed or going a little too melancholy, or refuse to eat her dinner or something like that. And I would beg and joke and cajole and charm and whatever you got to do to get her. Because I'd say, listen, you need your strength. You got to eat. I made this beautiful meal for you. You got to eat. And so overall, that went really well. We had one evening where, and it was rare that she did this, but she just sat at the dinner table and she wouldn't eat. And I made a beautiful meal. I forgot what it was, but it was, well, beautiful meal made with love. And she wouldn't eat. And it was probably a long day because once you take this on 24/7, it's just a killer. You get no sleep, and the stress is up there, and the emotion, and the physical, emotional, and mental pain. It can be a tough deal. So on this night, I got very angry with her. But instead, I just said, "Listen, you need to show me some respect. I turned my life upside down. I do all the cooking, the cleaning, the shopping. I give you, luckily she was med free for pretty much most of this time. Once they cut off the meds, she didn't need those dozens of medications that all these doctors were giving her. It was amazing. But I said, I do all this and I wipe your butt all the time. So you got to show me some respect. And so she didn't budge. And I flicked off the kitchen light, left her in the dark. And I went down to do some laundry and took out my frustrations on an innocent load of laundry. And a few minutes later, I came back for round two. I flick on the kitchen light, and my mom's sitting there with her hands folded in her lap. Her silverware is on the plate. The plate is empty. She ate the entire meal in the dark. And which is not easy at any age. And how she did it, I don't know. But the message got to her where she said, no, he's right. I've got to show some respect. And she ate her meal. And I was just flabbergasted. So I just leaned in. I didn't know what to say. So I just leaned in, gave her a kiss and said, thank you. And she out guilt tripped me. You have that thing where they say, this is your parents say, and you may have said it too to your daughters, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you right before you get smacked or what. That was a famous line from my dad. But with my mom on that night, it actually did hurt me more than it hurt her to shut the lights off and leave her in the dark. So that was a special moment because she showed her grace and also the guilt tripping. It was very effective. So she did good. But I did a lot of, I was the youngest son and I had three sisters. So I learned how to take care of women and loved helping her look pretty and stuff. One of the things I learned early on was wanting to feel pretty doesn't end at 90 or 85. And so whenever my mom would come out to Los Angeles to visit me, I would take her to Beverly Hills to my friend Stan's beauty parlor and give her the movie star treatment. And I knew she loved that. And when I was growing up, she worked full time for the Bergen Record, which was the largest newspaper at the time in New Jersey. And but she treated herself to a once a week to the beauty salon where she got a shampoo and set and had her nails done. She had beautiful nails. And so I wanted to recreate that at home because I don't know the last time she went to a beauty parlor. And she didn't, she had this old drabby clothes. So the first thing I did was bought her a new wardrobe. And that changed her mood. And then I created this thing called Day of Beauty, where I gave her this beauty salon treatment at home. So she normally got a sponge bath in the morning and the evening. And then, so while she sat on the commode on Day of Beauty, I soaked her feet in Epsom salts. I shampooed her hair and gave her a full body massage and did her nails and finished it off with lipstick. And she chose her wardrobe, what she wanted to wear that day. And I blow dried her hair and put it in the ponytail or sometimes in a braid. And the first, I just thought, oh, this is a nice thing to do. No big deal. But so I got her ready and I had to wheel her in. She no longer walked. So I wheeled her into the kitchen from her bedroom. And on the way in, we have a big round mirror in the dining room. And I parked her in front of that mirror and she just beamed. And I leaned in, I said, who's that pretty girl? And it was amazing. And, I thought about when's the last time she looked in the mirror, first of all? And then when's the last time she looked in the mirror and liked what she saw? And when's the last time she felt pretty? And I said, oh my gosh, this thing is, the effect of this was just amazing. And it was not I mean, it did a lot for me. It certainly did a lot for her, but it did a lot to everybody who saw her because it just radiated. It was contagious.
So as you're thinking about this and going through this, are you starting at this point to jot down these memories and notes, or was this much later that you decided to start making note of this?
I always recorded family history. I did a lot of notes. I only had those 8 days with my dad, but I took notes all the time because I wrote in Hollywood. I did screenplays and stuff and with the stand-up, but I always like recording family events for posterity, and especially with this with my mom. There were conversations and moments that we had that I wanted other family members to know about, certainly, and learn from, because some of these things were just incredible. And I didn't want those lost. So I always took notes. I always did. I took a lot of photos and a lot of videos also. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I knew I was going to record it in some way, whether maybe even a screenplay or a poem or something. But while I was doing this, I had some friends, being baby boomers. We got a lot of people who are going to go through this, so I had a couple of friends who started to go through the same thing, and I was kind of well into it at this point. So I gave them some tips and advice of what I was doing, and they got some benefit from it. So I said, I think I got something here, and I think a book is going to be the best way to get it out to people. So I don't call it a how-to book. I call it what I did book, and there are some tips in there. And my approach, being I guess a carefree bachelor with no kids, was a little different than other people, but it was a good one, and it worked well with my mom. And so, I decided I needed some space, so I didn't write the book until after I moved to France, and I haven't written a book before, so I knew it was going to be memoir, and so I started studying the genre. I had a memoir teacher I worked with for a while, and then started putting the book together. But I had extensive notes, which helped. And then as you're writing, you unlock these memories from childhood that were just amazing. So the structure of the book was very interesting. So chronologically, this whole journey might not be that exciting, but each chapter in the present journey seemed to spark a memory from the past that helped support why I took the actions I did in that chapter, or why let's say an animal was important for my mother, because she was a dog lover or animal lover our whole lives, that we grew up watching this woman just care for animals and stuff. And so, yeah, it was good. And the response has been lovely. I mean, the personal notes I get from people and how they're reacting to it from critics and regular, the reviews, especially on Amazon and stuff, are just really humbling. So it's resonating, which is very nice.
It is. I mean, and that's having someone that's gone through this or gone through something themselves can often be the best to get advice from. When my dad had a stroke, everyone's so focused on my dad and having him get better, they kind of forgot about my mom. And my mom was having to take on a whole bunch of new responsibilities. She was, doing all these things. So we made it that, we tried to, as much time as we spent focusing on my dad, to spend as much time on my mom as well, and give her chances to get away, which I actually wrote this down earlier. You were talking about how you're with her and you're doing all these things in your 3.5 years. At our church, we have a thing called Parents' Night Out. And Parents' Night Out is when parents can go get rid of their kids, the people at the church. So you can go have a date night, do whatever. It gives the parent, get away from the kids. But I wrote down Parents' Night Out away from your parents. Like, did you have, I know that you had brothers and you had siblings there, brothers and sisters that could help out, but how often did they do that? And how often did you make it a priority to focus on yourself and your well-being? Because it's very, even as peripherally as I'm doing it right now, it can be very taxing, very tiring. Yeah. So how did you take care of yourself?
They say that I think it's over 30% of the caregivers die before their patients because of all the stress. It's incredible. So The pros say you got to take breaks, and I didn't listen. I figured, I'm a guy, I can handle this stuff. And so, but it gets to you because you have, even if, I mean, getting sleep was tough because you're always afraid of maybe she stops breathing now. Is she still going to be here in the morning? Even though there was no indication that she's going soon,
Right.
Early on, I put a baby monitor that was a video monitor in her bedroom, and she was a night person because she worked the night shift for the newspaper for 30 years. So she was active, and I'm watching on my phone upstairs, and it was like watching a reality TV show. It was great, but stressful because I wasn't sleeping. I should have just stayed in her room, but I was fascinated. She's talking to people and she's doing things, and it was very, very interesting. But I didn't listen. When my sister and I were taking care of mom in the beginning with hospice, once hospice came, we would get out and take a walk, see what's changed in the neighborhood and stuff since we left, and it was great. But I didn't do that on my own, and but I built one of the things I wanted to do is not only return dignity to my mom, but to our house. Our house needed repair, and the environment just didn't look that great. So I wanted to return to a nice, loving home. So I renovated the entire place from basement, starting the basement to the top, because she slept a lot during the day. So I was able to do that. So that was some stress relief and much needed stress
Right, but
relief.
you're not sleeping. You're working on your house during the day, your family, your childhood at home during the day, and then you're watching your mom's reality show on your phone all night. So you're getting very little sleep at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I was getting some sleep, but sometimes, I knew she would be up at a certain time. So usually it was around 10 o'clock. So that was okay. But sometimes 6 in the morning should be calling. And of course you fly out of bed because you don't know if this is the call again. So you fly out of bed, my heart's beating. I slide into her room. I go, yeah. She goes, oh, you are here. I go, well, of course I'm here. Where am I going to be? She goes, I'm just checking. And I just put my heart back in my chest and say, can we check if I'm here a couple hours from now? So there were moments like that, she was so funny. You have to laugh at it. But I went through some serious. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, as you're telling that story and calling out and making sure that someone's there and that because you want to make sure you answer. And there's been one time in my adult life I have not answered my mom's call on purpose. I was standing at line. I was the next person in line to pay for something. The person leaves in front of me. I'm moving forward as my phone rings. I see it's my mom. I disregard it. I'll call in 3 minutes. So I do. I pay. I literally call 3 minutes later, and then my mom's like, "Oh, just want to let you know, your dad wasn't feeling well. Took him to the doctor, and found out he's in the middle of a heart attack. So we're in an ambulance," and just like nonchalant about it. And so I'm always like, is that my mom? Because you get like that. You're like, is this the call?
Yeah.
And it does cause a lot of stress. Sometimes even the better, I am not going to relate your situation. Yes, I am, evidently, to my dog. I'm just going to say we have a dog who has some health issues. And we have often thought, we actually were on our way to go put her down. Our next door neighbor gave us a card. So sorry, we gave it back to him when we didn't put her down. But I told our vet last week that when she's not doing well, it's a lot less stressful for me because she just lays around. And I'm like, you're okay. But then when they're active and you're seeing them do this, you can't just go, oh, mom's awake at 10 o'clock. She'll be fine. I'm going to sleep. You can't do that. And I couldn't. There were many nights where I didn't sleep because of our stupid dog. And I love our dog to death, but I mean, it can be very difficult on a body to go through that. And it just amazes me that you didn't carve out more time. I mean, especially in that, but it is hard. People are telling you, take that time for yourself. And so, but I was going to say, after my dad had that stroke, when we knew someone else that had a stroke, and I just said, focus on your mom. She's going to need it just as much. And because you don't want to forget about that. I want to,
but I did. I want a shout out to my siblings, because my brother, who lived locally and handled all the finances and before I arrived, would stop in almost every day to visit to make sure that the people upstairs were not doing anything wrong and stuff. And he did Tuesday nights to keep in practice. So he would cook and make a mess in the kitchen, and then get my mom ready for bed at night. So he did that just in case he had to step in. So that was nice. And then every few months I had to go back out to LA because I had a snack food company at that time. And so I had to cook. The snack food company was slowing down, but we still had some steady stores on the East and West Coasts. So I had to go, I called it Hell Week. I just worked, again, probably 24/7 for 7 days and cranked out all this stuff. It was a lovely organic popcorn snack called Grandpa Poe's Originals, and it was nationwide for a while, and it was pretty good. But it was something my dad invented, so my brother and I started that company to honor him. And my sister, who lived in California, would come in and substitute for me. So we always had family on duty, which was nice. So they stepped up, when I needed it.
During this 3.5 years that you spent with your mom, was there a time where you, not California, going back to work 24/7, not to do something else that's committed? What was the most amount of time that you were able to commit to yourself to decompress, or did you get any during that time?
I didn't until my mother almost outlived me. In June of 2013, I had a severe pain in my gut, and I had a hernia like 30 years earlier. So I felt, I worked out too much because when I did the basement, put a man cave in there because I knew I needed stress relief. So I had a rowing machine, kettlebells and stuff like that. And I thought, maybe I just pulled something. So let me take a day off. Not from mom, but from working
Right.
out. And then the next day, I had a fever, and it was just insane. But the fever broke the next night. Again, I'm sitting there going, I'm a guy, I can take it. So 4 days later, it came back with a vengeance. So I drove myself to the emergency room, and they did a couple of checks, and they said, you need surgery. You have an infection. And if this they didn't tell me this until later. They said, if that infection got into my bloodstream, I would have been a goner. So I went through emergency surgery, and they removed 8 inches of my colon. And 2 weeks later, I had to go back to fix something that the original surgeon kind of maybe screwed up. And so I spent almost a month in the hospital. So that was my break. So we had to get temporary help to fill in for me. But what was good is my mom was my responsibility. So I wanted to get the heck out of there. So that was my motivation to get well fast, or tried to. So I got back, and I could no longer do the heavy lifting. So we had to hire somebody to do the heavy lifting because I carried mom everywhere at that point. Upstairs and downstairs and things like that. But so we had some help there. And then 8 months later, it came back another complication. So I had to go through another emergency surgery and was in for another month. So those were my breaks.
That just so everyone who's listening, that's not a break. I mean, you're trying to make it sound like a break, and I know that it is a break away from your mom, but I would never say spending a month in a hospital for any reason would be.
No, it was horrible. But
yeah,
the drugs were great.
Well, there's always a glass half full. I always say it's half full of whiskey, but what do I know? So, I do have a note on here as we're getting to the title of your book and kind of what that means. And I'm going to read what you had sent to me, and it may actually be an excerpt from your blurb from your book. It says, one day, hoping to make Genevieve, your mom's, time on the Commode a tad more pleasant, he offered her a cup of her favorite beverage. It was a hit, and a cup of tea in the Commode became a staple of the morning menu. I have a couple of just real quick questions. How unpleasant was her time on there, and what was causing these? I'm just Me still at 56, I like to get on and off as quickly as possible, which luckily is still fairly quickly at this point. So I'm just trying to imagine being on long enough that someone would bring me a beverage.
Yeah, that day may come. Well, at that point, mom couldn't walk, and getting her in and out of the her regular bathroom was a bit dicey. So we put a Commode bedside, and you get her on there. And sometimes Mother Nature took longer than was comfortable for either of us, So you got to wait. You can't force it, right?
Right.
And so one morning I asked her if she'd like a cup of tea, and she said yes. I gave it to her, and it was a hit. And yeah, so it seemed like a good title for the book, because it's my mom. I mean, I call my adventures my multitasking adventures, and mom was also multitasking. So
I know, and I was about to ask, and I guess it'll still come out. I was thinking, oh well, did you sit and share? Like now I'm past the Commode.
I didn't share a beverage in the same room.
Okay,
no.
I was just because I'm past the Commode at this point. So now I'm just thinking of your mom sipping on a cup of tea, and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that he was not sitting there and going, let me enjoy that. So this was her time in the morning, just to herself, then, that she probably looked forward to this.
I was there because I had to, take care of business once she was finished,
right.
and stuff. But yeah, I guess it was her moment. But she had the moments in bed. She slept a lot, so she had a lot of moments. But this was the moment with the tea. So yeah, but it was. I mean, people say in the book, I didn't. There was no line that I didn't cross. I did everything. So I was the caregiver, right?
Right.
So the wiping the butt wasn't the worst of things, but it was, it's things you got to do. So once I decided to take on this role, it was like, you got to get over seeing your mom naked for the first time, and get on with it, because I had a job to do. So that's where I think the acting and the design also, because I got to see what the environment, what was providing some challenges and stuff for her. So I moved some things around, and my brother, we bought iPads for her. So when I had to go back to LA, we would communicate in video, which was great. And so I had to design there wasn't a rolling iPad stand at the time. So I designed one and cobbled this thing together so it would be hands-on or hands-off for her. So it just leaned over the bed, and my brother would program it, and would be off to the races and stuff like that. So, but also empathy was really a good lesson, certainly from acting, but also in design, because when you're designing, you have to take the end user or the client in mind. How are they going to react to this? And so with my mom, I had to really, they're still your mother, even though you're in charge or their life is in your hands, but they're still your mother. They deserve dignity and respect. And they're going to be a little slower. They may not remember things. Out of the 6 kids, I'm the only one whose name she didn't remember, and I'm the one wiping her butt. So I have a chapter in the book called Does Wiping a Loved One's Butt Cause Amnesia? And I have evidence that, in fact, it does. So, but again, you can't take that personally.
Right.
She had some bouts of dementia. There was one point where we had, which was very rare, especially in the States now, a doctor called about 2 years into this thing. I played a doctor on TV a number of times, so I felt pretty comfortable. But we had a real doctor call up and say, they have an opening. Would you like to have a doctor who makes house calls? Because getting to and from, very rarely do we have doctor's appointments. But if we did, those were also a bit dicey, sometimes more harmful than good, getting her in or out of the house and out of the car, and elevators and all that business. So this the doctor was lovely, and she and my mom got along great. And she said that my mom was well cared for and doing great. So I liked her as well. And so at one point she whispers to me, she goes, "I think your mother has Alzheimer's." And being a good son, I said, "Oh, come on, she doesn't have Alzheimer's. I mean, she sees visions on the ceiling and out the window and doesn't remember my name, but that doesn't mean Alzheimer's, because she remembers how to cheat at cards, and she steals my ice cream when I step out of the room, but that's not Alzheimer's." And she goes, I really think we should run the test. So she ran the cognitive tests, and I thought she did great. The only thing that I saw she really had some difficulty with was the short-term memory. But all the other tests, I thought she did well. So at the end, I was very happy. And the doctor says, no, I think she has Alzheimer's. So I turned to my mom and said, Mom, you don't have Alzheimer's, do you? She says, I don't remember.
So was she doing that because of your mom's comedy timing? Was she doing that as a joke, or did she really not remember? So I was just going to say,
I'm not sure.
One of the things that I have trouble with right now is when I say something to my mom, and then either the look or the response is like, I don't know if you literally don't understand this, or like she made these things, and they were called packages. It was like you put everything inside aluminum foil and literally put it in the oven and just let it fucking cook all day. And they were called packages. And so one day, my mom she still wants to cook for our family and stuff when we come over. And so she'll be like, well, what do you want? And so we'll try to say something that's very easy. And we're like, packages. You just cut up the potatoes, the meat, carrot, whatever. And you just handful in each one. Very fucking easy. And we're like, oh, well, we should have packages. Well, what are packages? What? And it's just, and so we're just like, so, and sometimes and that's the thing that is baffling to me right now is sometimes she is joking and she'll be like, no, I know what you meant or whatever. And I'm like, well, stop fucking with me. Cause half the time I don't think you do know what I meant. And I just find that to me right now, that seems to be a challenge is with the communication, always knowing whether she's, and lucid's not the right word, but because we're just like, and I will tell you, we have used the word, I don't think there's been a recent visit with my mom that my wife and I haven't left going, your mom's losing it or my mom's losing it, unfortunately. And
you gotta roll with it. You can't be judgmental. You gotta kind of roll with it. And if it's funny, I give her the credit for the jokes. There was another one day. She said, "Why do you treat me so good?" I said, "Because you're my mom and you deserve to be treated like a queen." And she burped, and I said, "Well, queens don't do that." She goes, "How do you know?" I thought that's perfect.
Yeah.
So.
I was just going to mention, when you were talking earlier about having to see your parents naked and stuff. So this is a big thing that my kids have trouble with. And this is why I guess it's great. That's why they're not around maybe as much, but I love to be naked. I like to walk around. I'm very comfortable with my body. And I'm comfortable with I've told this story many times before. I dated a girl from Denmark. One day on very first date, she was changing at my house and just started getting naked in front of me. I was like, you're not very shy. And she goes, you Americans are so weird about the body. And literally I was like, yeah, we are. That doesn't make any sense because there was nothing at that time, there's nothing sexual about what's going on. I mean, it was just, she's getting ready to shower. And I remember one day I walked into work and it was the other person's problem. They didn't lock the bathroom door. So there was a girl sitting on the toilet in there and she screams in her and then kept, I can't believe it. It's like, it's just a fucking body. I mean, it doesn't, so I'm past that. With my mom, that stuff doesn't bother me, but I do have a feeling my kids could not get past that. I would like to say that they could, but I've also known them their whole lives. And I say there's very little chance they'll get past that.
I think once they start having children, they will.
Well, see, therein lies that neither one of our kids want to have children. And we keep thinking that will probably change, but at this point we're like, and we're fine with that. I bet you might be someone that may have a positive outlook on maybe not having children. Sometimes I took my wife's youth away from her at 21. I was 28 and she was 21 when we met. So, and then We had a baby, what was it, about 9 months and 2 weeks after we met. So it was very quick. So she, I often wonder, if she could go back in time, what would she have done with those years? Like I got 7 extra years from 21 to 28. I get to be myself and go out.
Right.
So I sometimes wonder about that. But our kids are amazing. But I also tell them not to worry about me. I am not expecting them to wipe my butt.
Right.
But I've also made it abundantly clear that I am also not Liam Neeson. So if they get in a world of trouble, don't expect for me to come and sort things out for them and dispatch whoever need. I'm not doing that either. So they don't have to wipe my butt. I'm not coming to free them anytime soon. When you wrote your memoir, what was the most startling thing that maybe you weren't expecting when you sat down to write it, or as you wrote it, that by the end of it, you were like, I didn't expect that. I didn't know that while it was that. Was there any startling revelations at the end of the process of writing this?
I think that, in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. Yeah, I'm very, let's say, emotional guy, especially when it comes to family. So I needed distance before I could write this thing. Even lately, I was reading a chapter and I started crying. It's like it's crazy. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to do the audio book, but I recorded that in November, about 6 months after the book was released. So I got over that, but it was not easy because some of these emotions, they come at a really unexpected time. This is not even a sad chapter, and I'm going because it's triggering something, in my youth. So, but I'll say overall, this journey was, to me in the beginning, was Mark is moving back to rescue his mom. Mom cry for help. I felt she deserved better. I'm going to do what I can to fulfill her last years with love, laughter, and joy as best as I can. But after writing, I think after writing it, maybe between that and the audio book, I had a lot of time to reflect, and I made some changes when I was recording the audio book and added some things that I thought might have been missing and stuff. And I'm thinking, I had a good life, an adventurous life. I've been overall a pretty good guy. But if I really want to look at it, it might have been my mom rescuing me, because I didn't have a main purpose, not having children or a wife and that kind of stuff. Unconditional love was really not in my purview. I would do things and jump into a new project or start up a company. And if it didn't work out, I moved on. But in this
I didn't even mention the many, I love the way that you phrased it. You had started, I believe, 5 nonprofits.
Right.
And you said, hold the applause because it wasn't by intent. So I love that comment.
Yeah. Well, failure, we learn a lot from failure. So I'm a very well-educated in failure. Anyway, so I think that this thing, so if I really want to look at it, it was, because this was probably if you want to go Hollywood way, it's the most important role I ever played, and I gave it my all, and it was a lovely thing. If I have to say, both of my parents died in a beautiful way. Both died in their beds, in their own bedroom, in their house, with me. And I had one sister with me for my dad and another sister with me for my mom. And we were there. So they were surrounded by love and a very little pain. And so it was. So for me, I would have to say that it was definitely a mutual rescuing. So that was probably the big realization for me.
Did you all ever discuss moving your mom out of the house?
She, before this, she spent, because my mom was falling a lot in her 80s, a lot. She didn't break a hip or anything, but it was a matter of time. And her walker, I say kind of a joke, she and her walker did not bond yet. So she kind of refused to use it and she would tumble. So she went to assisted living for about 4 years. and it was lovely because she had her own apartment and she had her dog, and they allowed her dog, and I visited there, and it was lovely, very expensive, but she enjoyed it, and she was very social, and she was invited to join the captain's table, which was like the original ladies that opened this thing up. They liked her because she was with it. She still had her head on her shoulder, so that was nice. But her dog bit somebody, I think maybe more than once, and they had a no biting policy. So they said the dog has to go. My mom said, if the dog goes, I go. So she moved back into our home, which was still livable. Luckily, we kept it, so it was dormant for like I guess 4 years, and then I not moved back, but I came back and fixed up the upstairs and stuff so we could have a family move in. So I made it kind of an apartment upstairs. Um, so she did have that break, and I don't think she was totally happy there. She wasn't totally unhappy, but being at home was a big deal. So once she was home, we had to have people come in and kind of look out for her. And then we wanted to keep her active. So my brother arranged for her to go to a senior center a number of, maybe even 5 times a week for some activities and stuff like that. So,
well, and the reason I was asking about that, I was thinking about with my mom and how important I thought it was that they live in a very way too expensive, in my opinion, retirement community. They moved there, let's see, I guess 6 years before my dad passed. It was nice. There's a lot of things for them to do there. Once my dad passed, it really became crucial because she is still, it's funny because when I would run into people and I would hear that they lived there, I'd go, oh, do you know my mom? And I'd say her name and they'd say no. And I'd pull out her picture and they'd be like, yes, we do. Because she's quite the social butterfly. And so it takes an hour to walk 50 yards because she's got to stop and say hi to everyone, know how they're doing. And so I think that was very good for her. And I was trying to think about, as you were talking, my mom, like, why didn't we keep her in the house? But it's because they weren't in our childhood home. So they had moved into, once my sister and I had moved out and gone about our ways, and I had my own family, and, they sold my childhood house here in Kansas City, and then they moved into like a maintenance provide villa. So it was still a standalone home, but they didn't have to like actually do any work. I don't even think they had to paint inside. But that's probably why there wasn't any attachment to the house. I think if they would have still been in the original house, that maybe she would have wanted to stay in there like after my dad passed, and they probably would have never wanted to look. So I wonder if that had something to do with it, because like I said, we weren't attached to the house that they were in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's nice that was there for you to go back to as well.
Yeah.
And I understand your mom not wanting to give up a dog either. So.
Right. Yeah. So it was interesting. So I have my parents were like the original recyclers. So very few things ever left our house. So holding for my brothers not to sell that house once, mom was out, was that played in our favor.
Yeah.
In that particular case. So that was good.
Well, so was it set up, or did you have to make many changes so that's one of the things as we start looking at, so we had downsized into an apartment, which is fine. But now that I do this, that's my backyard. I need a separate studio space. So as we've started looking for places, one thing is I'm 56. I really don't want to fuck with stairs anymore, honestly. I'm trying to find something that's either a ranch or has like a first floor master bedroom. But then why have an upstairs if I'm never going up there? So there are a lot. So was your house, how much changes did you have to make once she left the residential or the assisted living center back into the house for that first floor?
Well, I don't think they did anything because her bedroom was on the first floor.
Okay, it was.
And her bathroom was on the first floor. It wasn't an ensuite, so it was a separate bathroom. There's like 4 or 5 steps getting into the house, but at that point she didn't leave all that often, so that wasn't a big deal. Or she wasn't falling, let's say, too much. At least I don't think she ever fell outside. So no major changes there. I did, when I renovated, I certainly kept some things in mind. But, the doorways, this thing was built in the 30s, so the doorways were very narrow. So the wheelchair, I could get through her bedroom and maybe the hallway, but that wheelchair couldn't get to the bathroom. And the walker could barely get to the bathroom. So that's when we had to put a Commode bedside. And yeah, most of it was the wheelchair or me carrying until I had my issues.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's tough. I mean, because that is a big deal. I mean, I'm 6'5", so it's not like I'm an easy thing to drag around if need be. So if no one's carrying me up and down stairs,
right?
So, which I wouldn't prefer them to do that anyway. So at one point I had read in something you had sent me, this was your debut memoir. So do you have I guess sequel's probably not but a continuation or different stories? Because it sounds like this talks a little bit about your life leading up to coming back home, but it sounds like it's mostly focused on your mom and how that went. Are you looking towards something to talk about the rest of your life, either previous when you were in Tinseltown or now? We haven't even got to why you're in the south of France, which I don't know if it's amazing or not, but for someone in Midwest USA, it sounds amazing.
It is amazing.
Okay.
Yes, the next book, which is in progress, is going to focus more on my dad. I don't want to focus on me. In fact, I tried to leave me out of this book as much as possible. And once I hired an editor who actually was my memoir teacher, her first notes were, "We need to know who's telling the story. We need a reliable narrator. So we need to know that we can trust you and that we're interested in your story. So it's not about you, but we need to trust the person who's telling this story." So I had to add more things about me that I wasn't really wanting to do in the beginning, but it makes sense. I do understand that. So I'm trying to, with my dad's book, the last draft I did of this one, I took out 4,000 words because a number of those words were probably better in a book about my dad. And there's a chapter or two in this book too that could probably go into that. So I'll have to dig into them maybe a little bit deeper or revise those. But my dad was a very cool guy. So the original book was going to be 8 Days to Heaven, because that book was in mind well before my mom got ill, because I only had those 8 days. But I also, in 1995, I was working on an Italian stage adaptation of Fellini's 8½ in Hollywood. So I got into my Italian roots. And I knew we had some rumors about my great-grandfather. He was the mayor of this little village in Italy. And nobody had been back there from our family in 100 years. So in 1995, which was the 100-year mark, I coaxed my dad into coming with me. Now, he was 80 and well into this heart disease, but I didn't know how bad it was. He put on a brave face, and my brothers didn't really tell me. But I was out in LA, and I talked him into it finally, because he'd never been to Europe. In the war, he had an ear issue, so he couldn't fly. So he was a chemist, and he was sent out to Utah to work on chemical warfare. So that was his contribution, and he didn't like to talk about that at all. So I'm going to have to do some research to put some of that in the book. But I took him to this village, and he was a trooper. So we spent 16 days in Italy, and it was just great. It was a great bonding for the both of us, but also a realization of how bad he was, because when we first got to Rome, we get to the first curb, and he has to really gauge if he can do this or not. And I'm like, oh my God. He had to really think about it before lifting his leg to make that curb. And it was like, oh. So I always tried to help him. I said, I'm not an invalid. Don't help me. Don't make me look like an invalid. So that was our struggle. But one of the funny things is he was a diehard Catholic, went to 6:30 Mass every day of his life from 13 years on. Amazing. Anyway, so we go right to the Vatican. The first night we're there, we go right to the Vatican. So it's late at night, and we're at the Vatican. The Pope is in New Jersey serving mass in the Meadowlands, and my brother was at Giant Stadium, and we're at the Vatican at his home. So I shot a video sitting there going, "We come all this way to see the Pope, and the Pope is in New Jersey. What's going on here?" And I knew my dad was never going to have a chance, to see the Pope again. So that was a shame. But
Oh,
he took it in stride. And then we finally get to this village. The village is only 200 people. Now it's less than 100. It's a mountaintop village in southern Italy, and it was amazing. We only spent 2 days there, but they had one policeman. We found one guy that spoke some Italian. Some English. I spoke a little Italian, but not enough to really get through. And so Paolo was our interpreter. He says, "Let's go to the police station." And we heard the rumor that my great-grandfather was run out of town when he was the mayor for committing adultery in Italy. So we thought, if they hear our name, we may be run out of town again, because we don't know, how true this was or what the deal was. Anyway, he escaped and went to America. So this is the thing that we've had in our family, this rumor. So we go to the police station, and Paulo introduces me. My dad was real tired, so he sat outside. I go in, and I shot a documentary of this whole thing, but I put the camera down because the policemen, I don't know how they react to this. So we step in, and he doesn't even say our name. He just says, "Two men from America have come." And this little policeman, he was a little teeny guy, Vito, just launches into a story. And I'm like, "What is going on here?" And Paulo says, "Oh, this is a famous story. He tells this all the time. He told me this morning." And I said, "Tell him we're Porros." And he says, "Oh, these men are Porros." He goes, "Natale Porro, America, 1891. And launches into the story. And it's like, they've been telling this story for over 100 years. And we don't know who told it to who or whatever, but apparently my great-grandfather might have been the only guy from this town who went to America. It was crazy. So I filmed him later on that day, because he was the town historian as well. So he had all this lovely information. We went back 3 more generations. So we're back into the 1700s now of the Porros in this little village. And I asked him if he could do an encore performance, because this guy, it was showtime when Vito could tell this story. And so I have him there's one bar in this town, no restaurants, one butcher with a fake hand, so she wasn't very accurate, one school teacher, and one bar, Virginia's bar. So in the bar, I asked Vito if he could do this again. I want to film it. And so he performed this thing. And so I put that in the documentary. So it turns out that my great-grandfather was not the bad mayor. He was the guy that ran the bad mayor out of town. So the mayor, before my great-grandfather became mayor, was having an adulterous affair with his secretary, who was also married. And the village was not happy, but they were afraid because this guy was powerful. And as this rumor started spreading around the region, it brought a lot of shame onto Cello San Vito, was the village. And so finally, this one man in his probably early 30s stormed into the mayor's office and said, "You must stop this affair or leave this village." And that was my great-grandfather. So that's why they tell him the story. He was the hero that ran the bad guy out of town.
So then, was he ever mayor of this town?
Yeah.
Okay.
He became the mayor.
That's funny, though. The story that you heard is like, oh, so he wasn't the adulterer. I mean, because the story that sounded like you heard all your life was, oh, he may have been the adulterer. And then all of a sudden you find out that he wasn't.
There was no question. He was run out of town for committing adultery, was the story we heard. And we have no idea who brought that from Italy. It had to be a relative, but very few relatives came. So I have no idea still who brought that, but it was not true.
Do you know the timing when this story, maybe after his wife passed away, he started telling the story to sound more like, "I got to run out of town." And I know that was a horrible accent. I'm really bad about, being, maybe that sounds better than you force the guy out of town. Hey, you get out of town. I was the bad guy. Sometimes it's good to wear the black hat.
Maybe, yeah. Well, he tried to outrun the rumor. He lived till 96. This guy never spoke a word of English, as I found out, and he lived to 96, the original guy that came over, my great-grandfather. So that's pretty cool.
See, and
there's more about him in the book.
That's another cool thing that I love hearing other people's stories, because I don't have stories. I was adopted. So, and I've told this many times before, I think this is why I don't really care about birthdays, is because I don't have, there's no story. I was brought home, depending on how much sleep the night before my mom may have gotten. I used to always think that I thought I came home like at 3 weeks old. And then at some point I was told that it was like 6 months or 9 months. So there's a discrepancy as when I was brought home or maybe where I was or something like that. But it just with birthdays, because I don't have stories. Like our kids have stories. And that's cool. And they would be able, because we've told them the stories, they would be able to tell their kids. Like our oldest, she was born on her due date. My wife went into, her water broke at 4 a.m., but didn't go into labor for another 12 hours. I mean, we have a whole, I remember the lights that I ran. I remember all this. So I love stories. Unfortunately, with me, I just don't have any that start before me. I mean, even when my parents that raised me, amazing people, they would tell me stories. I wasn't connected to those. Oh, well, our family, well, yeah, the family, now, I get it and stuff like that. So I think that is amazing that you're able to find that out. And I think it's even more amazing that the family was led to believe one thing for so long. And then did anyone's like, did it matter? Like when you found out the real truth, did it really matter, or was it still just an interesting twist onto an already amazing story?
It mattered to me. I think it mattered to my dad. Maybe my siblings not so much, but that's why I wanted to film it, because I asked my older brothers to come with us. It would have been a great bonding thing, and they had no interest. And I thought, okay, and I spent a lot of money editing this thing and making a nice documentary. And even one of my sisters said, "Why are you spending all this time?" I said, "Because someday you guys are going to appreciate this."
Has that day come yet?
I think so. They're not going to, go, "Oh, I'm so glad you did that 20 years ago," or something. But when I came back to Hollywood and started telling this story, I mean, the people were just raptured, especially at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. So I said, so I wrote a screenplay, and now in the next, I have a chapter about it in this book, but I have in my dad's book, I'm going to go more in depth to the story. Because I have a picture of my dad knocking on his father's door in Italy.
That is so cool.
The house is still there. And the police chief showed us, the house, and nobody was living in it at the time. But I didn't want to. I so wanted to go inside. I'm sure it's changed a lot, but still, it would have been nice. But I felt we didn't want to overextend our welcome. But there was a pile of junk in the backyard, and I have on camera because my father and mom both, I guess, never threw anything away. They were Depression babies, so nothing left our house. And my dad would always repurpose things. So, a refrigerator door became a sled for the entire family in the wintertime and stuff like that. So in the backyard, there's a pile of junk, and my dad picks up a piece, and on camera he says, "This is why we don't throw anything away at home. It's in our genes."
Well, there you have it. I love the sense of humor that you're, I think my parents have a sense of humor. It just always is displayed at the wrong time. Like their sense of humor kicks in when like a doctor's in front of them. And they can't, because I will snap at them because I'll be like, just answer the question they ask you. Have you felt, they don't want to know it. Just answer the question. So, yeah. So I love that your family not only has the stories to tell, share, and learn actually had much different outcomes than what you were led to believe, and that you were able to document some of those. That's one thing that I'm trying to think of. I guess our oldest was, she was about 12 or 13 when my dad had a stroke, and he was amazing with both of our kids when they were young. Took them everywhere, did everything with them, and just amazing. They are going to have amazing stories. I wish I would have had more amazing stories. I remember the only road trip I ever remember, the one road trip I remember taking with just my dad and him is we're living in Kansas City. He graduated at University of Oklahoma, And for some reason, the Kansas City Chiefs were playing my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was born in Tampa, at the University of Oklahoma in a preseason game. I don't know why it wasn't in Tampa or Kansas City. I have no idea, but we made the road trip and do it. And the thing that I remember about the road trip is how much silence there was. And it was just weird because we had so much that we could have talked about that we did, and he was so amazing. And I didn't realize. I was probably more like, at that point, I probably had I guess a 13-year-old and like probably younger than that. So whatever their ages, I had young kids. So I was probably wanting to nap in the car when I wasn't driving or doing something else. So I never got to experience those stories. So the fact that you got to experience those stories with your dad through travel and with your mom, which led to the book with your mom, and then circling back around to get to the book with that's just awesome. I mean, I think that's really cool. So your next book. So you started writing. Are you going to stick with the 8 Days of Heaven as your title? Is that what you're looking at right now? No.
So he had this popcorn snack. He invented this half popcorn. There's a couple of copycats out there now, but he invented this stuff in 1963 because that's when McDonald's was coming in. He had 6 kids, and he thought that with all the junk food and certainly candy, he was fearing impending dental bills. So he wanted to come up with something that was healthier and as addicting as candy. And so he came out, he was a chemist, so he was a smart guy. I don't know how he did it. I asked him, and I know how to do it now, but he made popcorn pop about a third of the way it's supposed to. So it's not the old maids that you see at the bottom of the barrel. They're in between. So they're these crunchy golden nuggets that were just incredible. And so we grew up with this family secret. And he had a couple of companies that he was dealing with at one point, but he wasn't happy with the deal they were offering. So he never did anything with it. And it's a pain in the neck and very messy to make. So in the early 80s, he stopped making it. And then in the 90s, we had nieces and nephews coming up, and they started to hear about this story. So I said, Dad, I think, these guys should taste this stuff also. So give me the recipe. And the first time I made it in LA, I almost burned down my apartment. That should have been the omen. But the stuff tasted great. So I brought it back, and the next generation went crazy over this, just like we did. And then Hollywood was my test market. So I was making it, and it was also my calling card for a lot of auditions. I would bring in a jar of these, it was called Nutrinuts at the time. And then we changed the name because there were no nuts in it to Grandpa Poe's Originals. I wanted Dad's name on it. And we were the snack of the day on the Rachel Ray Show. And it was—
I feel like I saw that for some reason.
You may have. I mean, we weren't big in the Midwest, but we were like in a lot of, I made it organic. So we were in a lot of like Whole Foods and Wild Oats, and we were nationwide in the Safeway family for a while, but we had national sales guys that just ruined that whole connection. We went nationwide they call forced distribution. So normally you've got to pay for shelf space, and all the supermarket cost you a fortune. And we were a tiny little company. We got that, I think, because of the Rachel Ray Show, where they put us in all the markets. And then we had people just drop the ball. And they wouldn't talk with me because they didn't know me. The Safeway people, they didn't know who I was. They knew our product, but they go, "Who's this guy?" This guy had no connection with us. So it took me months to get somebody to get on the phone. And by the time we did that, they dropped it because it wasn't selling, because we didn't do any advertising, because we had nobody running the show. So you really got to be careful with who you hire and stuff. So we had some nice moments, and we had some people who were after us early on, and then later on also, but none of those deals worked out. So I closed the company in 2015. So after my mom passed, we had a factory I built in LA, and so I went back and closed that up, and we just sold the factory last year.
Well, this was a question that I had written down earlier and didn't ask. At any time when you knew you were moving back to be with your mom, at any time did you think, I'll return to LA at some point? Or Did you think that you may be staying in New Jersey, or did you know that maybe Europe was the next stop?
I had no idea.
No idea.
I didn't make, because I had no idea how long Mom was going to be with us. So um, I still had, at that point, I gave up my apartment in LA. So that was kind of a step. But I had a factory, and I could always live in my factory if I needed to, I suppose. But yeah, I let the kind of the universe dictate what was going to happen. So once Mom passed, I knew at that point, since we closed up the snack business, I needed a job. So my sister and her husband had a design firm in Michigan, and so I went and worked with them for maybe a couple of years, and then decided to move here.
So that will be, and I've already warned you about this phrase. So that will be one of the final questions. So what led you to France? Because your history, your family is Italian, of Italian descent. And
we have French on my mom's side.
Okay. So
but
were you familiar with that area, or what led you to where you're at in the south of France now?
Again, none of this makes sense either. So I've been to Italy, the Italy trip with my dad. Then I was in there again in 2014 after my mom passed. And then I had a girlfriend at the time who always wanted to retire in France, and she lived in LA. And so in 2015, she found a house near where I live now that she was very interested in. And I said, well, at that point, we weren't no longer a couple, but we thought, well, it might be a nice investment. I liked France. At that point, the time I was here was very enjoyable, and I felt really welcome here. So I thought maybe that my French ancestors were guiding me or something. So we had an Airbnb in the village where I live now, and this house was outside the village. And so we spent 5 days in this village, and I fell in love with the village. The people were lovely. It's my apartment was built almost 500 years ago. And Moliere, they say, was born here. So it's got a lot of theatrical history and architectural and political history. They've got their own little Hollywood Walk of Fame with all the theater people, the French actors. It's lovely. So it's very creative. There's artists of all kinds here. And I've got cobblestone out my door. And so in the 5 days, I found this apartment and said, I'm going to move here someday. And I wasn't expecting to move here that quickly, but things just kind of worked out where I said, I think I can make this move now. My sister at the time, I finalized the deal in September of 2016. And my sister was teaching in Albania at an international school. And so I was back in Michigan at the time. And my sister, I said, if you want to come to south of France for Christmas, I'll come back early. Because at that point, it was going to be a rental and a vacation home for me once in a while. And I came back in December and stayed the 3 months that I was allowed to, and just said, this is great. I'm not leaving. So I had to go back to the States and get a long-term visa, and that's been it.
So as an expat, what is the best thing of living where I saw some pictures. I read about Moliere, his troupe. I guess he had a traveling troupe that was based out of there or something like that.
Well, he wasn't even Moliere yet.
Oh, okay.
He's Paquin, I think, or Paquin. He came from Paris. He was sponsored by, I believe, Prince Conti. So they all had sponsors because they were dirt poor. And he wrote a couple of his big plays while he was here. So they say Moliere was born in Pézenas.
Okay. So yeah, and I read. So I was looking like it looks like it's around 8,000 people. I couldn't really get the pictures that I saw were mostly of downtown, and that looks very appealing to me. Except as I grow older, I have fallen once. And the whole conversation with my wife, who's 7 years younger, she goes, how did you fall? I go, I was walking and I go, I fell. And she goes, I know, but how? I go, that is literally the entire story. I go, I was walking and then I was in the process of falling. And so I literally see these places and my first thought is, I'd really hurt myself if I fell there. If I fell against that wall, that would hurt. So, but it is
But the healthcare is, they'll take care of you.
Oh, well.
It's unbelievable. If you like wine, I live in the largest wine growing region in the world. So wine's a big deal. Wine is excellent and it's cheaper than water. It's amazing. Um, just the people are lovely. And if you have I didn't speak French before coming here.
At all?
I'm okay with it now. No, very little. They say we have 40,000 words in common. So there's a lot of words that we have there in common. Some are different. So the commode in France is a bureau, chest of drawers. So I'm gonna have to change the title if I translate it to French. So when I told one of my French friends the name, he goes, "Why not?"
Yeah.
And I go, "Yeah, but it's different." And a cup of tea on the toilet just doesn't have the same ring to it. So they're lovely, and they keep apologizing for their bad English. And I go, no, this is my problem, not your problem. And they all want to speak English, so that doesn't help my French. My girlfriend's first language is French, so that helps. She's Swiss, but French, but she also is fluent in English, so I can't get away with anything.
That's amazing though. And I like the part where you're like, well, I can just do it now. Because that's one of the things that my wife and I discuss is when will we know, if we decide to do it, when will we know it's the right time? Because there will always be, it's always the wrong time. You can always point out a reason of why it's the wrong time. So we have to be as the positive and go, this is why it's the right time.
You go in with, at least I do, almost everything. My motto is find the joy. So I go in with that attitude, open heart, open mindset. This is going to be fun. This is going to be joyful. And I do that with almost everything that I do, including taking care of my mom. It was like, I told her, I said, we're going to have fun. If I do this, we're going to have fun. And my goal was to make her laugh at least once a day. And, when you set goals like that, it's a good one and not so hard to do either. So,
so one of the things that I do right now with my mom and also for my soul, probably because I wasn't a great kid. So I try to go to church twice on Sunday. So I'll go to her church with her in the morning because she doesn't have my dad to go with anymore. And one morning I didn't tell her I was going to go. I usually would, even though she was expecting me there every Sunday morning, I would typically the night before or whatever, if I ate dinner with her one of those nights, I'd be like, hey, I'll see you at church Sunday. And I guess I hadn't said this to her. And so I was there waiting for her inside. And when she came in, benefit of being 6'5", you can be seen from across the room and you can also see across the room. But as soon as she walked in the front door, as soon as she saw me, her face changed. I mean, it lightened up. And those are the things right now that I'm really appreciating. And that's when you were telling the story about when you had got your mom, for lack of a better term, all dolled up and you're going by the mirror and you stop and she sees herself. I mean, those are the things that I think are amazing. And that's the trouble that I have right now is that it seems like those are immediately followed up by the blank stare on my mom's face. Like I'll ask her a question and so, but when you're telling the stories about your mom, that is great. And I'm looking forward to the stories about your dad as well. So that will be something. Do you have an ETA on the book for your dad or?
No.
Okay.
I'm spending so much time marketing this one. So it may be a year or two. And then I've got to see if my publisher's into this as much as I am. So hopefully they will. They'll like it too. But the one about my dad will be more for, let's say, entertainment. I mean, this one has a purpose, right?
Right.
To hopefully encourage people to take care of their loved ones in a different way. My dad's going to be, I think, purely entertainment, but there's a lot of entertainment in this book too. So people seem to like, I guess, what they call my voice. And the humor is important, and definitely I infuse the humor into almost all my stories. So, I think it will be good. And
so once again, we've had on the program. This is author Mark Steven Porro. He is the author of A Cup of Tea on the Commode. Mark, where can people find? Because I know it's available, and I've seen it in ebook, audio book. What other forms and where can they find your book currently?
It's also a paperback and large print. It's on Amazon, of course, but a lot of other Barnes and Noble, a lot of other online retailers in languages I don't even know. It hasn't been translated, but it's in our my publisher has a distributor from Chicago that's got this all over the place. So it's cool. It's very nice. But if they Google a cup of tea on the Commode, we're everywhere. I mean, that's the website. I have a YouTube channel with like over 170 like little teasers, 1-minute teasers, and most of those are funny. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
And I do have all of your socials and all of your links. So,
Okay.
to find Mark, you'll be able to go to the Stone Genius on Instagram. I'll have all that link there. I'll also put all that information on. If people don't always read the descriptions for the episodes they're listening to, but all that information should be there as well. So. Cool. I very much appreciate.
We just won our 6th literary award. Came in this week.
So, and I should have written those down, and I didn't because there were 4 that were mentioned. I believe that you were that you had sent me.
So they're coming in fast and furious, which is really nice. So that's yeah.
So was that an expectation as well? Did you ever think that not only I'm going to be an author, but now that you're an author, did you ever? So you have to submit your books, your book.
The publisher does some.
They do. Okay.
I don't know what they did. Most of them I've done because with a small publisher, you're limited to which, let's say, award competitions you can enter. And so I don't know if they've done any direct ones, but no, I have no idea. I mean, okay. I knew it was pretty good. But again, you put your heart and soul into something, you have no idea once you put it out in the world. Yeah. You know, the world can be cruel. There are, most of the reviews have been lovely from critics and especially on Amazon. Some of the reviews have just been gorgeous. And then people have written personal notes. A lot of people from my hometown, I haven't been in touch with for over 50 years, were reconnecting, and they knew, if they didn't know me, they knew one of my siblings, and it's lovely because I'm now the conduit between the Porros and my hometown. And my hometown just wrote, they did an article in the paper my mom worked for 30 years, the Bergen Record, which was a big newspaper in Jersey. My hometown newspaper ran an article, and now a magazine, which I think is for Bergen County. It's 201 magazine. So the hometown has been jumping on this thing, which is it's very cool when you get the love from the hometown. It's very nice.
Well, and there may be a chance that this book and all the accolades it's getting will help change the Porro name in that small hilltop village in Italy. So maybe that will help change it'll. You know, now they'll be like, oh, and I'm not going to do the accent again.
No,
because please. It was horrible. But they'll be like, oh, this town, this is where Mark Steven Porro is originally from. This is where his family started off originally. So
yeah, it was funny in that bar we were at. So Virginia's bar, again, the one bar, Virginia. Before I left, since I knew my great grandfather, I gave him one of my Hollywood photos and signed it. So in the documentary, you'll see Virginia's bar and the famous celebrity that came to town one time. Was pretty funny.
So can people find this documentary? Or is it?
If they go to my website, which is a cup of tea on the commode.org, I have a bonus material page.
Okay.
And on that page, there is the documentary, but a lot of other things that are mentioned in the book that I thought people might be interested in. So it's very cool. I have a lot of photos and some of the poems and these memory books that I mentioned in the book, other photos of my mom and our home and stuff like that. So it helps if people want to dig deeper. But I put that documentary on there, because a couple of people were asking about that. So I thought that would be, I mean, it was done on a handheld camera in 1995, so it's not super quality, but they'll get a good idea of my dad's sense of humor.
You know what? That's nostalgia, though. That's what you call that in 2024, nostalgia. So, okay. Mark, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I very much appreciate it. For everyone else that's listening to the podcast, thank you so much. We've had Mark Steven Porro. He is a New Jersey native who made it all the way out to Tinseltown, now living in the south of France. He is the author of the award-winning book, A Cup of Tea on the Commode. You can find that anywhere. You can go to @TheStoneGenius Instagram page. You'll be able to find all the connections there to his social media and everything there. You can also expand the description of this podcast. I'll have all of it there as well. Thank you all so much. Mark, thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Ro. My pleasure.
Yep. Everyone, we'll talk to y'all later. Have a good one.